That is the beautiful weather of what we have available in Chicago. Now, with fall coming up, we're probably going to see this kind of weather for at least the next 4 to 6 months. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is I've done videos on depression before, and when it comes to any disease process, whether it's cancer, heart attack, arthritis, autoimmune disease, thyroid disease, high blood pressure, cholesterol, even mood, it's always better when you take care of preparing for the disease process than when you're deep into a flare-up. If you're into a flare-up, you still have to make lifestyle changes, but they're much harder to manifest, and definitely symptoms are much harder to reverse at that point. That's when you have to go to big gun medicines. Now, you can avoid that if you prepare for it. So in this case, where it's getting darker out, it's getting colder out, the days are getting shorter, the stressors of the season are getting higher and more accumulative, it would probably be wise that I prepare for this season right now before it starts up. So the idea would be from October till about March, instead of waiting for, say, major depression to show its head, I would prepare my patients by making sure they have a really good exercise or activity routine, a very good mindfulness practice or some form of stress busting, and nutrition has to be maximized. That includes whole foods in addition to supplementation for deficiency. We'll talk about that in a second, but taking them one at a time, exercise is one of the best therapies for depression. A lot of people don't realize it. And again, if you're deep into depression, nobody wants to get moving, nobody wants to go to the gym, nobody wants to get out and go for a walk. That's why you have to do all this stuff beforehand. If you're rock solid with your practice and the brain likes what you're giving it once, 3 times, 5 times a week, then it won't be so hard, it won't be such a chore to go ahead and do what you usually do throughout the months of October till March. So it usually includes a 30-minute, 3 to 5 day week kind of activity. I usually try to push a moderate to intense activity, but it depends on the patient. I just did an entry-level video for exercise, and my patients that don't exercise, if they just get out and walk, that could be very strenuous for them, especially if they decide to do backpacking with weights or carrying a weighted vest or just walking at a certain speed. That is all dependent on the user. So whatever the individual has come up with, I would say that has to be honed down and rock solid from October till March. I don't like to have my patients try to maximize, max out, peak, summit. I'd rather have them just maintain their current conditions until springtime. Then you can break out and do some great things in spring, but you just have to hold. Last thing you want is an injury in the winter time. In addition, if the exercise is done at the right time of the day, say anytime before 5 p.m., it not only helps with getting nice, refreshing sleep at night, but also helps you during the day if you happen to be dragging or if your cortisol level tanks at about 2 or 3 p.m. because the adrenals aren't firing, then the exercise will kind of wake you up. It'll act as a little bit of an alarm clock, a little bit of a caffeine burst. So what better way to do it than when you're tired? And again, I know that when you're tired, when you're falling asleep, when you're crashing in the middle of the day after eating, that's the last time you want to exercise. But you don't wait until it becomes that much of a crash. You get there before that event occurs. Again, you preemptive strike. So I usually exercise in the morning. I never liked doing it before. I got used to it. Now I love it. And it starts my day off with a little energy burst because it's like a caffeine rush. So whatever you choose, you have to try to adapt to it and maintain it and hopefully just carry it on throughout the winter. Doesn't matter what activity, I just say go and do it. Try not to exercise too late at night, and hopefully it'll support the other endeavors. The other endeavors would be mindfulness practice. Now, I have a lot of videos on the benefits of mindfulness, the benefits of relaxation practice. Before this season gets bad and when it starts to snow, when it starts to get cold and lonely, that is when the mindfulness has to come out. And if you start in the midst of a season, in the midst of stress, and much harder. So if you develop some form of a relaxation practice now, it could be your own. It doesn't have to be meditating like me. You can listen to David G. You can listen to guys on YouTube. You can develop your own form. You can go to a class and learn about that in an immersion at a yoga studio of some sort. Whatever it is, I think if you dive into doing it 5 to 10 minutes at night and then 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, it'll set your night, it'll set your morning, and then your meals will reinforce the day. You'll set your night, set your morning, meals will reinforce the day. You'll have this pattern that the brain is used to, and it'll carry you through till springtime. But when stress comes up, if you're rock solid with your practice, stress will not cause such a fight or flight response. Remember, if you go fight or flight, sometimes what happens is in that time that you're stressing out, everything you eat will also go straight to fat. So even if you have just a morsel during the stress response, it does not digest the right way. It goes into digestion and ends up in this little pocket here, in here, on the thighs, instead of being digested properly. So another reason to be bulletproof for the season. But again, to do that, you have to prepare for it. So if you haven't developed your own mindful practice, try to experiment and find one now. Don't wait till the middle of the season. Third component is always nutrition. So there's ways to eat that will support a sleep cycle and support a good, healthy lifestyle. Usually I say high protein in the morning, high carbohydrates that are healthy at night. Try to make your food and your meals regimented. And then hopefully decrease on the alcohol, decrease on the tobacco, and maybe not so much caffeine. You have two timers. When dusk begins, it looks at when dawn starts, and it bases it on what the eyes see. You also have a timer in the gut, and it does not have to jive with the sun, but it would be nice if both timers talked together and coordinated. So that's why it's important to maintain a good eating habit, instead of waking up in the middle of the night and having a steak sandwich because you're hungry and you're craving. So having a very predicted and planned nutrition practice is important. It also helps the sustainability of exercise if you have a good amount of protein in. Again, you try to balance your macronutrients as best as you can to be healthy. I like to shift everything in the morning as far as those macronutrients that wake you up, and shift everything at night as far as those macronutrients like carbohydrates that make you sleepy. In addition, you always take care of deficiencies. So vitamin D, especially in Chicago or any state north of Georgia, you're probably lacking vitamin D, so make sure you take it. I say that even in the summertime, if your vitamin D is low, take the supplement. It doesn't matter if you spend time in the sun. If you're low, you're low. And most patients should be avoiding the sun because of melanoma, so I'd say vitamin D all year round. Omega-3 fish oil to balance out your omega-9s and your omega-6 is always very important. If you have a problem with fish, fine, go for krill or go for flax, but it's harder to measure those. And I've put videos online as far as how much to take and when to take it. And then there are certain herbs that I mentioned in my previous depression talk that you can rely on too. You can do herbs to manifest and keep that ritualistic sleep-wake eating pattern. Sometimes valerian, 5-HTP at night, or ashwagandha, rhodiola in the daytime. Great herbs to use. Low side effect profile. Or if it gets really bad, you can go with low dose naltrexone at night or hydrocortisone during the day, but those are prescriptions. And that's usually for more severe cases. Sometimes we'll treat the specifics of reactive depression. As I mentioned in the video, we have St. John's wort, SAMe, and a lot of these things can be used into even teenage years. So if you have a young adult that's going through the same problem, this might be worth it. If you have a child that's going through the same problems, homeopathic pellets might be worth it too, but you have to really be guided by a doctor that's been trained in homeopathy. If you get things on the calendar, if you start planning things out, then your winter goes by fast. You don't have to just blow through winter. It still is nice to observe the great beauties of the winter. I get out and hike in winter. I love hiking in the winter. So I still use that as a challenge. It's a lot cooler. You just have to throw more clothing on and get the right shoe wear on. But just because it's winter in Chicago doesn't mean we button up, stay inside, and don't get out. I think it's still important to get out and socialize. And that'll be the last cue, is that those social gatherings that we go through and those parties and fests that we go to, it's always a little bit tempting to indulge in the alcohol, in the food. Part of the beauty of the social gathering is to take in and imbibe and take advantage of the tastes of the season. But you also have to pay for that. The next day, I wouldn't do that 3 days in a row. I might say prepare for that day, that night of feasting with a little bit of a tight restrictive diet, maybe a little exercise before, a little exercise afterward, but always try to balance things out. If you do nothing but parties and fests, you're going to gain a couple 10 pounds, and then you have to work to get it off. It's better if you get in front of it and you prepare for it than to get behind it and always try to catch up. Just remember, even if it's seasonal affective disorder, mild depression, reactive depression, major depression, it doesn't have to manifest in a form of sorrow, sadness. It can actually manifest in a form of pain, joint swelling, sleep disorder. It can also manifest in the form of a pain flare-up, an IBS flare-up, a fibromyalgia flare-up, a little bit of ache and pain in joints that usually are quiet, sometimes even the form of sleep disorder, disrupted sleep, problems with snoring, hot flashes, impotence. It can do a couple different things. It does not have to manifest purely as mood. And that's why it's so tricky. No one is immune to the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder or depression of any severity. So it would help anybody, whether you suffer from a pre-existing disease or if you're an average Joe on the street. All the things I suggested are non-medicinal and wouldn't hurt to do anyway. Now certainly if the diseases are presenting and they're severe, that's when we have to pull out the prescriptions and start up on heavy doses of 1, 2, maybe 3 pills. But that's also when we organize a team of a psychiatrist, a psychologist, counselor, and other folks on your team to get you back into wholeness quick. Either way, if you're feeling these things or if you're noticing a family member or a loved one is feeling these things, it might be worth it to ask your doc about what we should be doing, how we should be investigating, and how to reverse the problems. If you're concerned and the symptoms haven't occurred yet, then it's an easy question to say, how do we plan or prepare for a possible flare-up? And what should we do? When should we kind of let up? When do we reassess? Hopefully this has been helpful, so don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to me for weekly words of wisdom. And don't worry, the season will go fast.